Good evening, everyone. Time for episode 12 of Kerr's Rage, part 1 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga, starting at page 142, the chapter Lycurgus. A cloaked figure hid deep within the glen. Within the shade of the forest's dark canopy, his eyes felt at ease, but his heart was angered. Only 6 of his precious wolves remained to him, but the bitches were still young enough, and careful breeding would see the pack rise strong again. His master would not be pleased with his failure, but his orcs were performing admirably in the north, and that was where his victory would come. Scratching his favorite beast behind the ears, he knew not to underestimate this group of vermin again. We will pay them back when the time is right, my friend. Mark my words. And the wolf named Pestilence growled in agreement. They would pay. Evil was patient. They lurked in the woods until nightfall. Climbing onto the back of Pestilence, Lycurgus led his wolves northward. They didn't linger at any of the innocent farms for a bit of slaughter, for they had a greater purpose. Racing in the shadows of hedgerows and along the darkest pathways, they traveled unseen. As long as Lycurgus remained the alpha male, the pack would only ravage when he released them. But woe to him should his strength ever fail. The Great North Road. The road was well worn and heavily traveled, passing by several merchant caravans and farmers bringing their harvests to the marketplace. They frequently asked for any news from the north, but their information was always second-hand, and no one knew any more than what they already knew. Now only a half-day's ride from Thievestown, the companions journeyed on in silence. The previous night's encounter had left each of them to their own thoughts. To make matters worse, a soft drizzling rain began, and their spirits fell even further. As was often the case with soldiers and once soldiers, their thoughts took them far away, to places more pleasant perhaps, or to moments in the past still in need of thought and resolution. It was only natural then to think of matters of the heart, or moments of merriment to wash away the dark and dreary. Leander had said barely a word all day. He was riding mechanically, and his mind was far away. It had been nearly 10 years since he had last stood upon the shores of Sundsvall, and now his home and his family seemed lost to him. His human father would now be past middle age, and it was doubtful that he would ever see him again. But the loss of his fondest love was his biggest regret, for elves of his mother's kin are born destined to join and remain forever with their soul's mate. It was not a process realized at birth, but rather a spiritual awakening that happened along with the onset of puberty. It was the birth of an incessant calling, drawing the one to the other's soulmate. And as it was with his ancestors, so too was it with him. Only for him, it was not the path to happiness, but a road to tragedy. As a child, his mother had introduced him to a young Halfar girl close to his own age, in part to let him know that he was not alone in his ancestry, as well as to strengthen the ties between 2 neighboring families. Her eyes were the color of amber, and her hair flowed like molten silver. Her laughter and her voice were like the bird whose name she bore. Her name was Robin. Together they had watched each other mature through the myriad trials of youth, and when the time of awakening came upon them, they fell in love. It was a time of peace, happiness, and of the fondest dreams between 2 lovers. But the love which the elves were born to was not to be for them. Leander knew in his heart that she was his soulmate, but in the manner of humans, she doubted. For Robin, the passion that they shared was too powerful to understand, and she became frightened and confused by the tidal wave of emotions that crashed inside of her. In the end, her human's desire for independence brought about a deep resentment within her, and she pushed him away. He would never forget the words that she spoke to him the last time that he'd seen her. "Don't you understand, Leander? I can never be whole as long as this pain controls me. It's just too much to bear. But only together can we be complete. That is the heart of the Lyosalfar, How can you deny our love? I didn't ask for this. I want to be my own person. How can I love you if I don't feel whole? It was such a painful moment that tears flowed from them both like dew from morning leaves. What do you want me to do? It kills me to know that you don't want me, especially when I know that you still love me. I can't see you anymore, Leander, at least not for now. Not until I can find the pieces of me that are missing. You've got to understand. She trembled with the sincerity of her emotions, and though he knew that their love was genuine and beyond their control, he knew that he couldn't go on hurting her. He would have to obey her wishes, although her wishes might change on the morrow. I'll have to leave the village, he said a little too coldly. I can't stay here if you don't want me. But what of the elders, she said, regaining some of her composure. You are an initiate. You won't be tested for the priesthood for at least 5 seasons. Who will train you? Master Ronan will understand why I must leave. I will train myself. That's impossible. Then I will never become a priest of the woods. Then I guess that this is goodbye for now, she said, kissing him sadly and, for an instant, regrettably. I guess was all that he could think of saying, and that was the last time that he saw her. He just stood there and watched her leave, frozen and unable to act. It was an event that had plagued his dreams from that day forward. If not for those final moments, he would never have left Arundel. He would never have left Robin. To ease his own pain, he had left in search of adventure. He had left in search of answers. In his mind, no woman would ever appear more beautiful than she, and in his heart, no woman ever could. Forever would she be the only woman that could answer the elven call within his heart. It was a power that the gods had given them to unite, one that would leave him forever alone. Long ago he'd written a poem for her, and he remembered it as they rode. Robin's Song. Molten silver hair trapping sun's own light, eyes of amber shine her soul's perfect light. Her face so fair thine heart burns with longing for hair of molten silver over a heart of gold. For who is Robin? I shall tell thee. Her lips touch fire, the flash of her eyes stars, her smile cascading river, beneath hair of molten silver over a heart of gold. Her amber eyes reveal twilight silver stairs, climb them to the thrones of fairy kings whose realm lies there. Forever will they dream of molten silver hair, dancing sunshine over a heart of gold. For she is Robin, the most beautiful. Are you okay, Leander? D'Artagnan asked worriedly, reaching over to shake him out of whatever was ailing him. I thought that we'd lost you for a minute there. You started riding right off the road, mumbling some kind of tune, like you saw something that we didn't. I did see something from long ago. It's not important. Are you sure? I'm certain that Carmen won't mind stopping for a while. No, don't be silly. I'm fine. If you ever need to talk about it, D'Artagnan said, while riding ahead to leave him to his thoughts, just let me know. Of them all, D'Artagnan was probably the only one who could understand. D'Artagnan had never mentioned anything to him about love, except for a few small affairs that he had. Excuse me. Maybe he would understand it all himself one day. But for now, it was a burden that he would have to bear alone. Indeed, if he never returned home again, then he would have to bear it forever. The rain continued throughout the afternoon, soaking through their cloaks and finding every dry spot that they may have possessed. To prove the point, Kerr periodically lifted his boots to let the water drain out. This proves that dwarves were never meant to ride. Morideus never made an animal narrow enough to accommodate dwarven hips. See how my boots rest at the perfect angle for collecting rainwater? Each time he emptied his boots, it brought smiles to the entire group. But Kerr was not amused. Dwarves aren't meant to ride these damn animals. I'd rather walk any day. One thing about Lordman's Mountain, it only rains there on the outside. They reached Thieves' Town at sunset. When they finally reached the Boar's Head Inn, they were wet, cold, and thoroughly miserable. Hopefully Longbeard would have a few empty rooms and stalls available for their horses. Their animals were nearly exhausted from the events of the past 2 days. It was their first responsibility to care for their mounts, and it was one that Carmen had been taught from an early age. Leading them to the large stable flanking the inn, she dismounted and opened the corral's gate. She kept her cloak pulled closely about her face, for although it did nothing to keep her dry, it helped to prevent the rain from obscuring her vision. The corral was empty, and little else stirred within the stable, save a young boy busily brushing down a large gray mare. She was relieved to see that most of the stalls were empty. It meant that there were probably empty rooms inside as well. There were only 2 other such inns in town, and neither of them was close by. Stable boy, we've got 3 horses in need of care and fodder. Yes, my lord. Ma'am, the boy said in surprise, for few women warriors ever came to the Boar's Head. She seemed noble, despite her sodden clothing and disheveled appearance. What's your name, young man? She said. Eowyn, ma'am. Well, Eowyn, here's a gold piece. If our horses are well cared for and still here in the morning, I'll see to it that you get 2 more. Holy cow! I'll take real good care of them for you, ma'am. You can count on it. Nodding excitedly, he stuffed his first ever gold piece way down into his best pocket, the only one without holes in it, and took the reins from Carmen's outstretched hand. See that you do, she scolded him jokingly, as he led Alger after him. Turning around, she wasn't surprised to see that all her companions had dismounted and removed their saddles and gear. They helped the stable hand lead their horses into separate stalls and hung their saddles to dry. It wasn't long before they were tramping through the muddy corral again and climbing the steps of the inn's raised porch. I haven't been here for years, Kerr said. I hope that the grub's still good. I stopped by a year ago, Carmen said, and it hasn't changed. I don't care, Kayla said, as long as the food is hot and the beds are soft. To their surprise, Longbeard instantly recognized them. He had hot food, rooms and baths prepared for them. Teresa, have the girls prepare baths for our new guests. It's obvious that their road has been long. I see that your hospitality hasn't changed, Carmen said. That's why I'm still in business, my lady. I always aim to please. The baths were hot and dry clothing was loaned to them. It was a much welcome privilege, and they lingered for as long as possible, for they realized that it might be their last for some time. Dinner was roast mutton and potatoes, which they relished with the ravenous hunger created by hard work. Afterward, they planned their days to come, especially their visit to Grog Anvilhead's smithy. With any luck, he'd have more complete information for them, and some equipment to replace what they had lost. Their rooms were simply furnished. Straw mattresses, basic wooden furniture, and an oil lamp were all that they provided. They were standard. Inn furnishings, which were a blessing compared to sleeping on the ground. Kalo looked curiously at his roommate, Leander. Why are you sleeping on the floor? I don't want to get used to the comfort of a bed until this is over. I've got a feeling that we're headed into quite a storm. I think something big is going down, especially since we seem to already have enemies that we know nothing about. He kept talking for a while, but Leander was already fast asleep. A knock on their bedroom door shocked them awake. Time to get moving, boys. It was Carmen. We've got a lot to do today. Pack everything up. So much for a good night's sleep, Kayla complained. My back's killing me. Mine feels great. You should try the floor sometime. Plenty of time for that in the field. Packing up their belongings, they were surprised to find their clothing had been washed, dried, and left folded for them outside of their doors. They were soon ready to go. The rain had ended sometime during the night, and the morning sunshine seemed like a blessing. Carmen bought 2 more horses from Longbeard and paid the stable boy in secret. She knew that any listening thug might try to steal it from him. The gold would allow him to buy new clothes for himself and feel rich for a while. Wishing Longbeard farewell, they rode north through Thieves' Town's winding streets and arrived at Grog's smithy within the hour. And the next episode will begin with Grog Anvilhead and page 151. Thank you for listening, and as always, read Curse Rage, then read Part 2, The Drums of Doom, followed by the prequel, The Last Admiral, Part 3 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga, and the soon-to-come-out Ice Moon. So remember, as always, read Curse Rage by me. Thank you and have a great night.